Call order a regular meeting for the normal town council for April 4th, 2016. Please call the roll.
Mr. Fritzen?
Here.
Mr. Preston? Mr. McBride?
Here.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Here.
Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
Mrs. Gaines?
Here.
Mayor Kus?
Here. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item of business is the omnibus agenda. These are items that will be considered under one vote unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion. I would like to be excused from voting on any bills I may have incurred in my duties as mayor. Ms. Lorenz?
I will pull item D. D as in dog.
You. Mr. Fritzen?
I've asked to be excused from voting on the Bloomington offset bill, and I'd also like to pull item G.
Move approval.
Thank you. Items to be considered under the omnibus vote tonight are approval of the minutes of the public hearing of March 21st, 2016, and approval of minutes of the regular meeting of March 21st, 2016. Approval of town of normal expenditures for payment as of March 30th, 2016. A motion to authorize the renewal of the town's participation in the Municipal Insurance Cooperative Agency, better known as MICA, the insurance program for the plan year 2016-2017, beginning on May 1st, 2016. A resolution waiving the formal bid process and accepting a quote from Dave Capodice Excavating Incorporated in the amount of $27,422 for public sanitary sewer extension on Broadway Street, or Broadway Avenue, to serve 703 and 705 Broadway, and approval of a budget amendment to line item 508-7520 and 432.65-80 in the amount of $7,422. Resolution to waive bids and accept a proposal for engineering services to upgrade the HVAC system at the Normal Theater from KJWW Engineering, and to award a contract in the amount of $29,750 for design, bidding, and construction phase services. Resolution to award the bid for a railroad crossing casing pipe extension project to George Gildner Incorporated at a total cost of $102,288 plus potential bonus for early completion. A resolution to award the bid for Jacobson, Johnson, and Taft Water Main Replacement Project to G.A. Rich and Sons at a total cost of $1,452,954, plus, again, a potential bonus for early completion. A conditional resolution partially approving the 8th addition to the Vineyard subdivision. A resolution authorizing the renewal of a joint agreement with the City of Bloomington and Ecology Action Center for Energy Efficiency Program. Please call the roll.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Gaines?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The omnibus agenda is approved with the exception of two items, the first of which is a resolution waiving the formal bid process and authorizing the purchase of a 1/2-ton pickup truck from Dennison Ford in the amount of $22,539. Ms. Lorenz?
Yes, I'd like to move that approval.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Lorenz?
Okay, thank you. Really just a point of clarification on the waiving of the formal bidding process in the case of purchasing such a vehicle. My understanding, and I'll start with what my understanding is, and then maybe, Mr. Peterson, you can add to that or correct it in any way. Essentially, there is a process to purchase a specific vehicle through a state purchasing contract for purchasing these vehicles. Why is it that then we at times opt to go with another, a dealer, and are we limited to the local dealers, and how does that aspect of the process work?
Sure. Let me answer that specific question, then I might talk a little bit more about just the process of waiving bids in general, which we do from time to time, and it is, I think, confusing for people as to why we do that, but there's certainly a good justification to do so. In this particular case, is part of the purchasing policies for the town that the council has adopted. We are allowed to purchase vehicles off of the state bid without going through our own individual bid process. And there's good justification for that, because the state generally purchases hundreds of vehicles, and so they are going to get far better prices than are we as a municipality when we may purchase one car or one pickup truck or again, small numbers. The state of Illinois, when they bid out their vehicles, they write their bid specifications in such a way that any other public entity, specifically municipalities in Illinois, can piggyback on their bid and get the same price from the state bidder. And usually it typically, for whatever reason, it's usually the successful bidder is usually located in either Springfield or Chicago. And I don't know where the bidder is this year. I don't know what city it's in, but it's not local. But what we have done as part of our purchasing policy is instead of just going ahead and purchasing the vehicle from the successful bidder, we call the appropriate local car dealer, and in this case, the winning bid was a Ford F-150. So the local car dealer that sells Fords is Dennison Ford, and we consider Bloomington local, as is normal. So we'll call Dennison Ford, and we'll share with them the state bid and ask them if they are interested in matching the bid so as to keep the dollars local. Sometimes they will say yes, they'll match it, sometimes they won't. It depends on the car and the circumstance and the dealer. In this case, Dennison Ford said, sure, we'll match that price. And then we added to the vehicle, and it was explained in the report, a hands-free module, so we can operate a phone without having to violate the law. We can do it hands-free, which is nice. And we also had a trade-in that we included, so that's why this came to the council. Ordinarily, when we purchase vehicles off of the state bid, so long as the purchase price is underneath the budgeted amount for that vehicle, we don't even bring them to the council. It doesn't require council approval. This case, since we added the hands-free module and we included a trade-in, we felt we should have council approve that, since it's a little bit different than just buying it directly off the state bid. So that's the reason behind this. So you're essentially right. It's a cooperative bid, and we do, the municipalities are permitted to have their own purchasing policies, develop their own purchasing policies. If not, then they have to comply with the policies set forth by the state of Illinois for municipalities. Now, interestingly enough, the purchasing policies that Illinois has imposed on municipalities are fairly limited, not like universities and other state agencies where the purchasing policies are extremely arduous and complex. In municipalities, if a municipality doesn't have its own policy, the state simply requires that the municipality bid out any public works type project that exceeds $20,000. They don't require anything else to be bid. Other materials or supplies or things of that nature don't even have to be bid out. The town chose, as do most municipalities, to adopt its own purchasing policies, which frankly are more stringent than the state's policies. However, it also, our policies require generally that every product that we purchase and many services be bid out so long as the total amount is expected to be over $20,000, and that's our limit. Unless we can make that purchase as part of a cooperative purchasing program, like the state vehicle bid. We've also purchased some Parks and Rec equipment off of a state procurement, off of a group procurement program. Fire trucks and ambulances we purchased through joint purchasing. In those instances, our policy says we don't have to go through a bid process. We also do not typically use a bid process for professional services, such as architects and engineers. We have one on our agenda this evening, because the state does not allow, and this is one thing, they do mandate all municipalities, even home rule, it's the Local Government Professional Procurement Act, something of that nature. But those kinds of services, you have to go through a qualification-based selection process. I mean, you can't hire an architect or an engineer based upon price. It has to be based upon the quality of service. And the state law allows you to simply contract with a firm which you may have a working relationship, this community, and we do have working relationships with a number of firms, or we are also permitted to go through an RFQ process, request for qualifications. Either way, and we've used both successfully. So in this case, for professional services, we don't typically do bids. We typically waive bids on all those situations because we have to by state law. And then the third classification is any other situation where it makes sense to waive the bids. But in those cases, we have to go to the council. You all have to approve the waiver of bids. Now, when would that occur? It oftentimes occurs when there's a sole source. There's one manufacturer or one supplier of a particular product, and it doesn't make sense to go through the process of bidding out when there's one supplier. In some cases, it's where, as I mentioned, professional service where we use an RFP or an RFQ process, which is more efficient, and it gives the town more flexibility to negotiate details of a purchase. So in those instances, we have to come to you as a staff and justify why we should waive bids. So again, our policies are more stringent than our state policies, as state purchasing requirements of municipalities, but they also afford you some flexibility when it makes sense to do so.
Thank you very much. I've had a couple of questions in recent weeks, and so that's very helpful. I really
Good.
appreciate that.
Okay.
Great. When did, just out of curiosity, when did we adopt these purchasing policies?
We've had purchasing policies as long as I've been here, which goes back to the Stone Ages. But no, I think probably my guess is the 1970s, we developed our first purchasing policy, and it's been amended from time to time. I think the last time we amended it was 4 or 5 years ago. But we do take a look at it from time to time and make some changes. But we've had one for a long, long time. Maybe even, Mr. Fritzen may have voted on the first purchasing
I
policy.
think it even predates me, which does make it the Stone Ages.
Further discussion on this item?
Not from you.
Please call the roll.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The resolution is approved. Our final on the omnibus agenda is a resolution to award the bid for University Street Water Main Replacement Project to George Gildner Incorporated at a total cost of $311,317, plus potential bonus for early completion.
Move
Mr.
approval.
Fritzen, thank you.
Second.
Mr. Fritzen?
My question is more technical in nature. It has nothing to do with I could have picked out any of the water main items, but we're replacing old mains with new 8-inch ductile iron mains. And as I read that, I thought ductile iron seems to be, when we're replacing water mains, it hasn't stood up very well to some of the soil types and things like that eat away at it. And so I just thought, I'm going to ask why are we replacing with ductile iron when it seems like ductile iron is the stuff we're sleeving or replacing elsewhere? So
Steve has a great answer.
I'm sure he does.
He's been dying to share this with you.
Most of the corrosion problems we have with old pipe is cast iron and some ductile iron. And the current installation methods we use, we wrap that pipe with a polyethylene sleeve. As a matter of fact, just last year was the first year we used a biocide-infused polyethylene sleeve. Basically isolates the pipe from the soil, all but virtually eliminates the corrosion issue from external sources. Ductile iron is obviously a lot tougher than most any other materials, including the plastics. You can take a backhoe and hit a piece of plastic and it'll shatter and
Yeah.
you're all done. We've had people use a trencher, digging a trench, and hit a ductile iron water main and saw on it for as much as a half an hour and still not put a hole in it. With 5 other utilities sharing the right-of-way, it's nice to have that kind of durability for other utility hits. So we've mitigated the corrosion issue that we often see and sometimes causes us to replace mains. Plus, we have the toughness, and plus ductile iron is a recycled product, so it's quite sustainable as well.
Great.
The
Glad I asked.
interesting thing about this polyurethane wrap, it really is not, there's virtually no more expense. I mean, it's an inexpensive, I wish we'd have known it, 30, 40 years ago, we'd have known to use that. It wasn't standard in the industry. Now it's fairly standard. And had we used that wrap at negligible additional expense, a lot of the water mains that we're replacing today would not need replacing, but, we didn't know that back then, and now we've learned a few things, so.
Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The motion is approved. We have no items of general orders tonight and 2 items of new business, the first of which is a presentation to the council by Andrew Johnson, General Manager of Connect Transit.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the council for allowing us some time to speak to you tonight. Over the past several years, we have made numerous changes to our public transportation system in Bloomington and Normal, and we feel we've made some progress towards creating a much better system for the citizens. But what we're here to talk about tonight is something that's probably one of the most exciting things we've ever done. And really, it's twofold. One is we are on the verge of potentially securing local funding through the local home rule sales tax. Both councils have voted on well, one council, you have voted on a budget that includes the sales tax funding, and Bloomington is set to do that next week. That is something that will provide us the opportunity to leverage other state funds and will allow us to offer things like Sunday service. At the same time, we're doing a complete restructuring of our routes. It's in the proposal phase right now. We have come out with a final proposal, which we wish to talk to you about tonight as well. It has the potential to really change the game for all the citizens in Bloomington and Normal. It provides increased frequency, better convenience, and generally a more consistent system for everyone. I'm joined tonight by Isaac Thorne. He's our Chief Operating Officer at Connect Transit. He is going to start us off on the presentation and take you through where we are on our comprehensive operational analysis.
Thank you. So we contracted with Nelson Nygaard to help us identify the strengths and weaknesses of the current existing system and identify opportunities and improve service and increase ridership. One of the goals of the comprehensive operation analysis was to meet the needs of current riders in the community. With this base of existing riders, we want to attract new customers and visitors to use the service. Third, we want to build upon recent investments and new buses and amenities such as real-time bus application, our fixed-stop transit signs, and we are also very excited to be adding shelters with the help of Town and Normal this spring. And finally, we want to operate the service in the most cost-effective and efficient manner. The guiding principles of the route restructure is for service should be simple. For people to use transit, service should be designed so that's easy to use and understand. Service should operate at regular intervals. In general, people can easily use and remember repeating patterns, but have difficulty remembering irregular service. So we want to make sure the buses travel or work on clock-based time. So every 30 minutes or every top of the hour, I want the buses to come. Routes should operate along a direct path. Fewer directional changes the route makes, it's easier to understand. Third, routes should be symmetrical. Routes should operate along the same streets in both directions. Routes should serve well-defined markets. Routes should include strong anchors as well. And lastly, service should be well coordinated. So at major transfer centers, we want to make sure the buses meet each other so people can make their connections. So we took a online vote on our website and had stakeholder input on what they'd like to see from improved service from Connect Transit. The top 3 votes were more frequent service, increased service, and more weekend service. Nelson Nygaard used this to make the route proposals. So this is our current network of routes. And we obviously right now operate on a very fixed schedule. Every 30 minutes, every top of hour, the bus is going to be there. But what we don't do well is serve well-defined markets. Some of our routes serve a lot of different markets, and there's no real purpose for them. Some routes also are very duplicative, such as the yellow and red. They serve Uptown Normal, downtown Bloomington, also the retail district out on Veterans Parkway. So this is the new proposed route system. This is very simplified and clean. Most of our routes will travel on bidirectional service, which means they'll travel both north and south or east or west on the same street. They'll also, because these routes are designed, they're interconnecting, so people don't have to transfer it just at a transfer center. They can jump off the yellow and onto the green. So we're not limiting them making their transfers just at a transfer center. We're also proposing a new hub at Walmart in Bloomington. Right now, that Walmart's only served by one route. It's now going to be served by 3 different routes. The other great thing about this is the Green A will now have higher frequency between Uptown Station and downtown Bloomington. That bus will operate every 15 minutes all day long. When we also see that that's a highly used route. Lastly, or not lastly, second to last, we're interlining routes as well. This is something that we have never done in our community, but it's not a new transit concept. What interlining does is we can use one bus for 2 different routes. And it takes the confusion out of transferring to a different bus, and it also helps us with what we call in transit industry dwell time. So we want to include 10% of the time as dwell time for our buses to make sure our drivers aren't speeding or acting unsafe. To get to certain transfer locations, or if they get held up by a red light, they're still making their on-time performance. And lastly, a new route, the TAN route, will operate from Uptown Normal to the airport. That's something we currently don't do. Once again, this is a 1-seat ride. People from ISU, Illinois Wesleyan go to Uptown Normal, get right up to the airport. All these routes will basically increase our frequency to approximately 30 minutes on most of these between on-peak and off-peak service. So during the weekdays, like I said, we'll have 30-minute service on most of our routes. Green A will still operate 15-minute service all day long. And our off-peak will start between 9 a.m. and last until 3 p.m. That's when we'll provide 60-minute service or 1-hour service. And we'll go back to peak service between 3 and 7 p.m. And that peak service will basically be 30-minute service. On Saturdays, we dial back the frequency a little bit because there's not so much demand as there is during the weekdays. We'll mainly operate 60-minute service with some routes operating 30-minute service all day long. And then we're very excited too about the possibility of adding Sunday service with the passing of the Bloomington Normal sales tax. Again, on Sunday, we'll provide service from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and most of that service will be 60-minute service. Our consultants also found that 57% of Bloomington Normal residents will receive increased weekday service. And that change is similar between Bloomington and Normal. Also, the greatest increase in service, the residents with the greatest increase in service have lower household incomes than the McLean County average. And we found, too, that no disparate impact on low-income or minority residents. And finally, our consultants are estimating that a 19% increase in weekday ridership, which is also very exciting. So with this new proposed routes, we'll have 14 streamlined routes providing 15 to 30-minute service all day long. Sunday service, again, will operate between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And all that Sunday service, the sales tax is paying for that $1 million in the total cost. Now, over the next year, Connect Transit will monitor ridership in the new routes to see what changes we can make. Some of these changes will be very minor, but any service expansion, what we want to do is add frequency to current routes. We consider this new proposed route system our framework for what we can expand on in the future. And in any service expansion that we do make, we'll have service standards which will be approved by the Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Isaac. And with that expanded service, there does come additional cost and some additional infrastructure needs, and I can go over that quickly. One thing you might worry about when we're expanding service is, well, how many people are we going to have to bring on? And we will have to bring on some additional people, but it's all an incremental increase as a result of that service. We will have to bring on some additional drivers, transportation supervisors and dispatchers. That is largely because of the need to work 7 days a week instead of 6 days a week. Additional mechanics, and you'll notice in administrative, there's one additional person as well. That will be a trainer. With the additional employees that we have, going up to about 150, most of whom are frontline employees. We have one trainer. We really need two so we can conduct all the training that we need to do. Our bus peak will go up from 23 buses at peak times now to 27 when we include the increased frequency on weekdays. And as you see, our miles and hours will increase. I should note, however, if we were not doing Sunday service, the number of miles we traverse would be down from what we currently provide. You look at the spaghetti map that we have currently, where we're making all these big loops and the same buses are going on the same roads for different routes. We take out all that redundancy and still provide the same level of service to almost everybody in the community. So just in terms of the route restructure and not taking into account Sundays, this is a much more efficient system if put into place. Our next slide just shows what our current year budgeted operating revenue is. And the most important thing here is just what the percentages are. The state percentage, 65%. You worry about the budget in the state. Transit is not affected by that. There's a certain level of uncertainty, but at the same time, by state statute, they have to continue funding us, and they are continuing to do that. And the governor in his 2017 budget proposal has made no indication that he plans to cut anything for transit, so we will continue on this formula. We are using 21% of our federal funds for operating. And I will expand on that in a little bit. And then 14% comes from the fare box. So fares that passengers pay when they get on the bus, also our contractual relationships with places like Illinois State University and Heartland Community College. Now, if we move to 2017, we see things change a bit because we, if we do receive local sales tax funding, the percentages will change. 8% of our local operating will now come from Bloomington and Normal. We will still get 65% in state funding, and we will we'll get 12% out of the fare box from the fares given to us by our customers and our contractual partners. Now, that percentage does go down simply because things are diluted a little bit. The total operating budget increases, and we receive local funding, so it's only 12% that comes out. But the most important thing is 15% is coming out of the federal money. And the money that we get from the federal government is primarily meant for capital purchasing. You know, we being a small system, we're allowed to use it for operating, but that creates a backlog in terms of our capital purchasing, such as our buses and shelters and things like that. So what local funding will do is take a lot of the pressure off of the capital money that we get from the federal government and allow us to apply that towards infrastructure. So, next slide. Okay, so as Isaac said, local sales tax dollars of $1 million is being leveraged for an additional $1.3 million and change from IDOT, State of Illinois. And that will be used to provide Sunday service and also increase frequency during the weekdays. The frequency that we're proposing in this route restructuring of 15 minutes on the green and 30 minutes on everything else does come at a higher cost. We will be using 4 additional buses. Those include drivers and everything else. So it costs more, and at the same time, we're also using some of that funding to apply towards operating where federal capital money would have been used in the past. And in that case, we can use that federal capital money to acquire 7 more buses this year. And those buses are, they are coming in July, and it's just a matter of what the mix will be in terms of paying for it. And we should be able to use more federal money to do that. Next slide. So, as I said, it frees up over $500,000 in federal money. And the one thing that is important to keep in mind, even though we've been doing very well with the equipment that we have, most of our fleet is beyond its useful life and has become very maintenance intensive. We are in the process of replacing those, but we do have a very solid backlog of capital costs for mainly bus replacement, both paratransit vehicles and fixed route heavy-duty buses. So we have $10 million in needs total between federal and local and any other state money that we can acquire. So there is a need to make sure that we're putting the capital money towards capital. So what are the next steps? Well, we are in the home stretch on both route restructuring and also service expansion. Like I said, the City of Bloomington will be voting on their budget next week, I hope, and every indication we have is we will remain in their budget. They have stated that on numerous occasions, and it's looking very positive. The route restructuring public hearing is scheduled for May 2nd. Across the hall in the multipurpose room, and the following day we will take the final vote on the route restructuring with our Board of Trustees, also I believe in the multipurpose room. Now, if the Connect Transit Board of Trustees approves the route restructuring, all of the changes that I've talked about and that Isaac has talked about will occur in early August. So pretty much overnight we will restructure all the routes and start running Sundays. You know, one of the biggest things with that is be careful what you wish for. It's going to be a huge project to roll that out to the community. A lot of people already know what we would like to do and have weighed in on it quite a bit. But actually getting the rubber on the road is going to be another thing entirely, because every route will change. It will be quite a difference, and it's even internally going to be a different kind of thing, because we've had a workforce that has been used to never having to work on Sundays for a very long time. So a lot of them are very excited about that. I think a few of them won't be in football season, but they'll get used to it. And I guess that is it. What I would like to do is give you the opportunity to ask us any questions about this restructuring or new service. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. I'll start with a question. Could you talk a little bit about how you're going to roll this out to the public? You know, some of your population, special needs, or maybe older people that don't have connectivity, internet access, things like that. So how, you know, what kind of marketing and public relations plan do you have for getting people to know that, you know, come August whatever, when I go to my usual bus stop, I mean, I'd have a bus.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, we're working closely with our vendors to get those signs moved to the right places. We're still trying to figure out just how long that's going to take. There'll be a lag, but we're already working out a temporary signage plan as well. And Yes, you have alluded that some people don't have internet connections, that kind of thing. We will have a very robust digital marketing campaign, but at the same time, we're going to rely very heavily on something that's been working for us for many years, and that is getting out into the community, going to those organizations in those residential areas where people would really be affected, and just talking to them, having sessions to explain what's going on. And then also having open houses and whatnot that will allow people to get a better feel for how the routes are going to be. But we do understand that a lot of this is going to have to be us going to our customers and the rest of the community to explain what's going to change.
Further questions? Mr. Fritzen?
I mean, we've already gotten a few little spattering of emails and stuff like that, but, you have your board, and you've obviously done your study, and this is not something you're doing on a whim. You've studied it a long time. It floated some things, long before now, and whatever. When I looked at that map of your current routes, and then I look at the map of the restructured ones, it's like, my goodness, there have to be huge operating efficiencies there, and as a highly subsidized public entity, that's extremely important in this day and age. That you operate as efficiently, fiscally as possible, and it's amazing that you're able to make that kind of a change, and obviously there are going to be some inconveniences for different people and whatever, and I don't know what color route it is that I've gotten a couple emails on. Sorry, don't recall, but you probably know which one.
Betting it's the blue.
Yeah, blue, yes. Anyway, is it fair to say that the current routing, we probably have created some, for lack of a better term, spoiled customers, in that we're covering a whole lot of streets. They may not have the frequency that the new routing is going to provide, but there's a convenience of almost right at my front door in a lot of ways. And now with the changes, you've got to go a block or two or something like that to get to but you're going to be there more often, and you're going to be there. I mean, operationally, it's got to be, as far as being on time and whatever, that has to be a huge improvement, I would think. So is that kind of what's happening with some of these routes, like the blue route?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had some routes where we have taken the buses to places the buses shouldn't be going, just from a safety and space standpoint. We've provided service that has essentially been door to door for some people, but what we are doing here is just making it much more efficient, and making sure that we still have accessibility for the community, but at the same time, we're being responsible stewards of the tax dollars we're using as well. Will there be some inconveniences? Absolutely, and we're working as hard as we can to mitigate those as best we can. But in some cases, there will be inconveniences, and that is the reason that we've had so many listening sessions and so much outreach, because we want to be able to make the most reasoned decisions that we can, but while still maintaining the highest level of service for the majority of the community.
Mr. McBride?
Well, I have no doubt this is going to be a net positive, and I would think that there has to be a lot of enthusiasm about Sunday service in particular. That's something that's been talked about for a long time, so congratulations on moving forward with that. Maybe you could just speak for a moment or two. You touched on it briefly, that you'll be monitoring things once changes go into place, and maybe talk about how you evaluate and look for problems as they come up, and just how flexible you can be to respond to those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've certainly done a great deal of study on this proposal, but there's always going to be something you didn't anticipate. We will be paying close attention to the productivity of all the routes in their new forms, paying attention to the ridership, paying attention to the on-time performance, and also continually doing outreach with our customers to make sure that the bus is working the way that they expect it to work. You know, we've seen in other communities that have done things like this, and there haven't been a ton of them, but it's starting to become more prevalent. We've seen them, you know, have to make a change here and there in the first year of that newly formed structure's life. So we will be paying very close attention to it. We're also paying close attention to it from the standpoint of, in the future, after we've got some experience with these routes, we plan to utilize the additional funding that we get to add even more frequency. But we want to know which routes it would be best served on. So this is not something that we're going to put together and then we're going to put it on a shelf, pat ourselves on the back, and say, see you in 35 years. We're not going to do that. So, you know, we will monitor it at all times and make changes as necessary, and you know, we will more than likely be doing a full-blown operational analysis on our system at least once every 10 years.
Outstanding, thank you.
Ms. Lorenz, and then Mr. McCarthy.
I know that there has been a fairly well-organized group from the north side of Normal, particularly from Ironwood Gardens. There's probably some other along the way, maybe North Meadows Village, Landings, that area. They've been coming to your listening sessions, so I know that there's been good dialogue. I think I see a couple of faces here in the crowd today of the group that have been concerned about this. So, and they are predominantly the Blue E riders, I believe. They've shared with me on some of those occasions their concerns, and you know, as I've gone through those listening sessions and listened to try to as many people as I can, part of the issue to me, particularly on those far reaches, let's say North Normal, and you've got the same issues on the further south reaches of Bloomington, is we're kind of paying for some ills here of some land use decisions where we've put clusters of residential areas out on some perimeters. And so talk to us a little bit about why buses, in this case the Blue E, is not going to maintain their route all the way to the north. And then tell us a little bit about what you think might be either a temporary or an alternative scenario for these folks that may be finding that by August, less than 6 months, they may have to find a very different way to get to Menards and work and so forth.
Before you do that, Isaac, could you bring that map back up of the improved route so we can get a better idea?
That would be helpful, yeah. Maybe the original so we can see the,
That's the existing.
is that the original? That's
I'm
the-
sorry, this is the existing.
Yeah, so it's that Blue E that goes up, I guess that's really along Rab Road there and beyond.
Sure. And yes, you're absolutely right. You know, some of the problems that our transit system has is with past land use decisions. And these are decisions that were made a long, long time ago. And they've created problems, that wouldn't be problems if you had unlimited resources, but they are problems when you do have limited resources. If you look at that Blue E route, which is the one at the very top, it's colored blue. The east-west line there is Rab Road, and then it turns up Linden and goes to Ironwood, the apartments at Ironwood. There is ridership at the apartments there, but the issue is everything along that straight line and everything until you get to those apartments is, for all intents and purposes, dead space. There is no ridership there. There's very low potential for any ridership there. It's a situation where those apartments are pretty much an island. Now, should they have transportation services? Yes, we believe they should, but should it be fixed route transportation services? That's not really supported. And that's what creates what we call in the transit industry the first mile, last mile problem. In the case of Ironwood, it's more like 2-mile problem. But the question is, how can you have truly effective and efficient public transit service on fixed routes and still get people to that system without having to do things like go up to the apartments and then turn around in their parking lot with a 40-foot bus? We are definitely looking at other options for that. We feel that that is a very positive investment in our future. If we can figure out a way to effectively bridge the first mile, last mile issue and be able to get people in outlying areas into the system and get them to where they need to go. We feel that that's got the potential to eliminate the need every time you get a pocket of ridership to say, well, bring a fixed route bus in there, because that's not making the best use of our resources. But we're looking at ways, and I'm hoping within a month have a pretty concrete solution for that. We are very actively looking at that. Not promising at this point, but we're hoping within a month we've got a more concrete solution to get people into the system. Even in the outlying areas, just on the fringes, you're not that far away from a bus stop. Now, one of the big problems that we have in those outlying areas is there's no infrastructure, there's no sidewalks, there's limited traffic signals and streetlights. That's a big problem in southwest Bloomington, and it's a problem along Linden Road, too. So, that's going to help the issue as well. But we do not take the decision to discontinue service to any area of the community lightly, especially in light of the fact that there are some people who ride there. We feel that every one of our customers matters greatly to us, and it's an agonizing decision to reduce the service. So we are looking for a way to fix that problem. We think we have a pretty good solution. We're exploring that right now, and we hope to come back to you with something more concrete very soon.
So for any Blue E riders that may be here or listening, you're contemplating something in about a month's time that might be a possible?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And do you feel like that change or any of the changes adversely affects in a negative way, any of the lower income, say any of the trailer park, mobile home segments of our population? Have you done some analysis of sort of segments of population? Do you feel like how does that shake out across different socioeconomic?
Yeah, we've done full studies on that from what's called a Title VI civil rights standpoint. We're required to do analysis of that. Based on the percentages of service that's increased, service that's decreased, and what the demographics are of the areas that are receiving that, we're finding that there is no disparate impact on the minority or low-income areas. So in total, it's very balanced. Obviously, for those who are negatively affected, that's very
That's all
small
it is.
consolation,
Right.
but we're doing our best to mitigate that as well.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, we
I was going to add one thing, too. At some previous conferences I've been to talk about this issue, and this is a national issue, and a lot of the things that impact decisions that Bloomington Normal Transit is having to face has been 50 years of our land use policies, the way we've designed our communities and have some of these islands like Ironwood Apartments, which from a lot of standpoints works for people, but for public transit, it often causes significant trouble
Why I wanted to
and
bring
problems
that
in
up.
logistics of reaching those populations when they're so isolated.
It's precisely the point I was going to make, and I'll simply add to that, developers have gone out into the hinterlands where land is cheaper. And they've built, whether they're assisted living units or apartments, and then they come to the transit system and says, we need service. And in the past, the transit system has run a bus out there to the detriment of the whole system. They've tried, I think, with good intentions to try to serve these areas that are far removed that do, probably justify some service, but they've in doing so, they've damaged the entire system. They've made everything less efficient. And I don't think it's all local governments. I mean, there's only so much we can do to tell people what to do, where to build. There's a certain freedom in being, if you want to look at the meadows at Mercy Creek, they were, way out. And I'm waiting for the day that they knock on the door and said, we need transit service, and there's no way you could justify transit service all the way out there to the very northeast tip of the community. We even, in the annexation agreement we entered into with that group, clearly specified that they should not expect what we consider industry standard response from EMS. Because we're not going to get there. Even after the new fire station is built, that's going to be a haul to get out there. And so I think in combination with our comprehensive plan, as we begin looking at and how zoning is deployed, that needs to become a much more conscious decision as it relates to transit. And at least, even if we're not in a position to say no to a developer, we can make it crystal clear up front that you should not expect transit service. And that takes the pressure off the transit system when they come knocking at their door and say, okay, we want our transit stop. And they will. Every one of them will. And again, look what we've created. We've tried to accommodate all those in the past, and we have this kind of mess that now we're having to fix, and it's causing some pain to do so. But McLean County Assisted Living Facility, I know that's one that's right on the Blue E route. In fact, that's one, I think, where the bus goes and turns around in their parking lot practically. And, that would be great to have transit service there, but their location makes it very difficult, and I think their ridership is relatively low.
Yes.
Maybe 3 a day, where we have other places that have 40 or 50 a day. So, that's the numbers game that these guys are having to play. But I think you're both right. The land use decisions we make have got to be more influenced by transit than they have in the past. And I think the current transit staff are taking a much more active role in participating with our regional land use decisions, and hopefully that awareness will permeate both communities.
Mr. McCarthy?
Just to dovetail a little bit on the Blue E, I guess a little bit is, I'm excited to hear that you guys are working on a solution. I asked a similar question a few weeks ago about that, but should there be disruption, are there options for the folks up on the North Blue E? I know there's some mobility, and can you just talk to us a little bit about what those things are that already exist that could be a help?
Yeah, there are other options. For instance, there's a rural transit provider that called Showbus that can provide trips. They are in Bloomington Normal every day, primarily bringing people from outside the county and from areas we don't serve within the county. And they are an option. We routinely now, if somebody's not quite in our service area, refer them to Showbus. There's also programs offered through, correct me if I'm wrong, YWCA and
Wheels to Work.
What's it called?
Wheels to Work.
Wheels to Work.
Yeah, Wheels to Work. So there are some other services as well. We actually have a informational sheet, which unfortunately I do not have in front of me. But yeah, we've been handing that out as well. And then we're looking at obviously a solution if we can find one, at least on a pilot process, which will provide transitional services. But we're really looking for a permanent solution for all the outlying areas, and hope we can do something in a cost-effective manner. But it remains to be seen how that'll play out.
Let me ask you about your communication marketing plan. Can you talk to us a little bit about your slide showed going from essentially increasing your staffing by about 30. Does that happen overnight, or talk to us a little bit about how that works? And the timing of all
No, that is, the acceptance of the proposal is not guaranteed at this point. It has not been voted on, but we're already recruiting.
Okay.
Getting qualified drivers is very, very hard. You have to have the right types of people with the right customer service priorities. Finding skilled mechanics and people with management skills that can do transportation supervision and dispatching is also very hard. So we are right now timing it so our recruiting will dovetail with the actual passage of the budget, so we can be sure that we're going to be able to provide this extra service. And we hope to have our first training class in place in the next couple of months to get the drivers out there. But yeah, that's probably if you had to say any part of this was scary, getting the people is scary, because good help is always hard to find.
Well, I'm excited. You and I have talked a few times, and I've talked with some of your board members from time to time and been to some of the listening sessions myself, and I know the amount of time that you guys have taken to listen. If something's changing, it's a perceived negative. I know it's a hard decision for you guys to do that, but I really commend you on the lengths you've gone to listen to the public and to vet your ideas and listen to new ones and try to incorporate those. It's I'm sure a very difficult process for you guys, but I think it's going to be a really good positive in our community, and thanks for all you're doing. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That outreach is the only way that we can make the system better for the community, and it is the community's system. We're not doing this for ourselves.
Other discussion or comments? Please call the roll. Oh, we don't have a roll. We're not voting on that one.
Not yet.
We don't have any authority on that one. Item 7 is a motion to approve reappointment to the Normal Police Pension Board. Motion for approval.
Second.
And as this is a matter of personnel, there will be no discussion unless a council member would like to take this to executive session. And seeing no such request, please call the roll.
Mrs. Gaines?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye, the reappointment is approved. Ms. Gaines, if you'd make that announcement of the appointment.
Well, tonight is a reappointment, and it's Mr. Bender, who's was first appointed to the Police Pension Board in 2011. And so he will be serving again until 2018. And currently, he's employed at the Illinois Farm Bureau, and we thank him for his service.
Great. And that concludes our business here tonight. Before taking a motion for adjournment, are there comments or concerns?
My microphone on. A little bit slow. There we go. Just wanted to share with council that it is National Dark Sky Week starting today, April 4 through 10. So facilities management is coordinating some of the efforts we're going to take this week on shutting down our lights in the evening. For example, I think Mark Clinch plans to have a shutdown of Uptown Station for at least an hour one night this week, and he is working with the Normal Theater to shut down the theater marquee a little bit early on at least one night this week. So we're going to try to symbolically participate in National Dark Sky Week.
Great.
Right.
Motion for adjournment, please.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Gaines?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye, we are adjourned.
The woman here in the blue.
That's what they would, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. Some of our routes are at 16. Right now, we run right all of our